A gathering of deep gratitudes. A poem of thanksgiving from Thanksgiving Day 2020, Watch Hill, Rhode Island. For the rain that falls upon the sea today. For the water music of the waves washing over the shore, purling from the railing, softening the sleeping into winter gardens. For a handful of gulls whitening the wool gray of the sky. For the warmth of the fire flickering in the hearth. For the deep peace of the house, of this morning, of my body. For the joyful anticipation of a feast for one while the world suspends. And the toasts to make across the wide afternoon. For dear friends to talk with. Some see through a looking glass. Others feel quietly down in the heart. Like embers, will remember. And those here no longer will honor, continue to treasure, alongside all the Thanksgivings past, and yet to come, the best of them, the threescore plenitude of them. For all life's weathers, its simple wonders. The times of sun on the face, wind in the trees, a fresh breeze filling the sails, the storms, the calms, clouds, blue skies that have moved through the heart. Everything that has helped shape me has transpired in this living, inspired this being. And greatly, most greatly, every generosity, every gesture of kindness, gift of love, shown, made, received, all part and sum of my daily humbling, joyful praising, ever streaming thanking. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in to the 84th show in my ongoing weekly series. Coming to you live near the inrushing sea on the coast of Rhode Island. This is your poet and poetorialist Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more poetically, more expressively, more soulfully. Last week, we sensed into beingness and our becomings, their sounding, resounding chords, and the passages between who and how we each are today, and what inner forms, embodiments, we can or may arrive at and into from here. This week we're exploring gathering of many forms, from the and in-gathering of yourself to the gathering of resolve and resilience, the gathering of kindred spirits, as many will do tomorrow around Thanksgiving here in the United States, and to others around other feasts and cultural or ritual celebrations, to the gathering of vital thoughts, things, feelings. I've likewise gathered for us what I hope will be freshly inviting material for this 84th show, varied cultural commentary, poetry, and inquiry to illuminate and animate our theme. So let's gather round these airwaves for a while together. What if we begin back in the far past with hunter-gatherers, when early man, our ancestors, began. This is from Hunter Safety Blog, on amazing hunter-gatherer societies still in existence. It was written back in 2011. Before the agricultural revolution, human beings spent more time on this planet as hunter-gatherers, relying on nature's resources and their own survival instincts to sustain themselves. The advent of farming changed all of that. With the increasing contact hunter-gathering societies had with farmers and herders, hunter-gatherer populations decreased in sweeping numbers throughout the course of history. Some theorize that by the end of this century, the last hunting and gathering societies will vanish, taking with them a, quote, irreplaceable link to our past. Incredibly, here are some of the few tribes that have managed to maintain much of their independence as hunter-gatherers, and they speak about a number of them from the Kalahari Desert to the Andaman Islands. Very interesting they're still out there. So, a poem by Janet McAdams, who I discovered in my curatorial hunt for us. Hunter-Gatherers is her poem. Late fall, the white fur grew up your spine, thick as the tail of a marten. You built up the fire, wrapped your legs with skins, but how that chill wind broke through sill and jamb. We stuffed paper in every crevice, an uncle's will, the writ that changed your name, a certificate of degree of Indian blood, and one that said, "Oh, positive." Still, we shivered, your eyes yellow in the lantern's light. Always they were out there in a field of boulders the size of bears hunched over. Oh, you were silky with fur, with a sharp smell I could not get enough of. I fell into a dream of milk and skin on the bed of pelts in the winter cabin. When I woke, they had taken you, or you had gone with them, and didn't I, so green with sleep, track you the 3 days until new snow fell? I packed flint and tinder and a compass whose face shines in the lowest light. I learned a song to map the way and one to call you back. I crouched over every footprint, sniffing, and here was a broken branch, and here something like hair caught by a bramble. I followed and followed until I came to untouched earth and waited all the yellow hours in the clearing for the snow to come down, white as the winter blanket you long had wanted. In the spring, when you come down hungry from that other mountain, the space between one rib and the next deep enough to lay my finger, how much of you will remain or linger, bone or mouth or memory of the first sadness of humans? Will you dig from the crevices the paper where they wrote you down as this instead of that, or startle at the clatter of plates, the creak of the wooden bed? Will your skin shake off its fur, your claws remember they were fingers, and the hands, meaty as paws, soften into what I once could stroke or suckle? Thank you, Janet McAdams. Very interesting poem. This next is a piece by an excerpt from a thought piece by Charles Eisenstein, who I follow with interest. Time to push the human collective in the next stage of its birth process. So this is a segment of that. The long exponential growth curve of human society consumed the vast bounty of Mother Nature without apparent limit. Even when resources were depleted in one place, there was always virgin territory, minerals, forests, and cultures to exploit. The expansion consumed not only natural resources, but also the wildness in ourselves. It was the colonization of gift cultures by money and markets, of traditional patterns of social organization by law, police, and government, of vernacular architecture by building codes, of folk medicine by pharmaceuticals, of midwifery by obstetrics, of storied communities by generic housing developments, of the single circle by the MP3 download, of folk tales at the fireside by videos on YouTube, of the kingdom of childhood by the regime of schooling, of oral culture by written culture, of place-specific knowledge by universal formulas. None of these developments were an unqualified evil, yet undeniably, a gnawing poverty torments even the wealthiest people today, and a sadness at the unacknowledged loss that no new distraction can assuage. So, this struck note of our wildness and getting back to it, our wilderness, our natural, vital wildness, is obviously a theme of interest to him, of interest to me and others. And I just want to talk about it a little bit as we go through here and there. But I came across on that note an interview with Micah Mortale on rewilding. It's from the Daily Good. And it was an interview with Tammy Simon of Sounds True. And he's the director of the Kripalu schools. And he said in this interview, rewilding is a term that generally has two meanings. One refers to the rewilding of ecosystems, and one refers to the rewilding of human life. And human rewilding is based on the idea that modern human beings are essentially, you could think of us as a domesticated version of Homo sapiens, like a terrier is a domesticated version of a wolf. Modern human beings have changed as the years have gone by. We've adapted to living in indoor environments, not being very physical, not being connected to where our food even comes from, not being connected through our senses to stimulating environments, just outdoor environments that are so stimulating to our senses. So human rewilding is about beginning to reach out and reconnect with ways of living and being that most hunter-gatherer societies have access to, but it doesn't necessarily mean being a hunter-gatherer. It may mean things like gardening, beginning to grow some of your food or foraging for food. It might mean walking barefoot or even just intentionally spending time outdoors, beginning to become more intimate with the lands that you live on. So there's a lot to it. But those are the two main categories that I talk a little bit about in the book, and I focus mostly on the human side of it. His book, by the way, is Rewilding, Meditating Practices and Skills for Rewilding in Nature. So, listeners, we might think as a kind of regathering, a regaining of our natural selves, our natural natures, that rewilding. Rob Bresney in his talks about Robert Bly, who, blessings on him, he was quite a figure in poetry, and certainly one of my inspirations among many other poets. And Robert Bly recently, just days ago, I think, passed away. In his book, The Rag and Bone Shop of the Heart, Robert Bly says that to be wild is not to be crazy like a criminal or psychotic, but, quote, mad as the mist and snow. It has nothing to do with being childish or primitive, nor does it manifest as manic rebellion or self-damaging alienation. The real marks of wildness, he asserts, are a love of nature, a delight in silence, a voice free to say spontaneous things, and an exuberant curiosity in the face of the unknown. Thank you, Rob Bresney, and thank you, Robert Bly. And who wouldn't want to be more that way? I know that's part of my desire every day. From Gather and Grow, there was a piece on ways to rewild yourself. And so we've talked about what it is. And here they say to revert back to a natural or untamed state of being, it is the process of undoing unhealthy modern conditioning and recreating cultures and lifestyles beyond domestication. It is the process of rekindling our connection to nature and unearthing a truer, wilder, more holistic way of life that centers nature and simple living. And in the chaos, they say, of our global pandemic, economic instability, climate change, and social justice movements layered on top of an already fast-paced and overstimulated culture, I see the need now more than ever for people to rewild. So they have a few ideas. One is to go into the wild, to spend extended time in nature, which unequivocally changes us at our core. I agree. Plant a garden. Nourishing yourself with the food you cultivate is an incredibly empowering process. Make a list of the things that make you feel alive, grounded, free, nourished, and authentically yourself. Move your body, run, dance, stretch, breathe deeply, and embrace your physical sensuality. Create a nature journal. Each time you go into nature, take notes of what you notice. Eat seasonally. Eating locally grown fruits and vegetables that are in season is a delightful way to indulge in nature's seasonal bounties. Maybe some of us will be doing that tomorrow and other days. Discover your true north. Ask yourself who you are outside of the labels that social groups attach to you. Bring nature indoors. Collect little tokens of nature that speak to you while on your nature outings. Surround yourself with natural textiles. Disconnect from the digital world and social media. A central part of rewilding is dropping the distractions of our modern world. And last, learn how to build a fire and cook on open flame. It's a primal pull to the fire that no human can deny. It's so ingrained into our DNA that seeking out opportunities to gather and cook around a fire is a wonderful way to get in touch with our primal, self-sustaining, wild selves. So thank you to Gather and Grow for that. Those ideas for us. Well, speaking of fire, on that last note, and making it and gathering round it is a poem of mine. I'm going to refrain it again. I've shared it once here and there. It was the lead piece for an immersive open-air experience that I created of the same name a few years back, Around the Fire, where the light dances on a circle of faces, where the heat toddies the spirits in all close-gathered bodies, where, since epochs and eras long before Native Americans honored the four winds under new and full moons, before the Zoroastrians lit the great fire at Yazda, that glows on millennia later, before the Druids, Bedouins, even before Apollo and Vulcan, Ogun, Fuji, Agni and Granus, Pele and Mishquatl, when early man made fires in the green dark hearts of forests, in the open mouths of sheltering caves, where, across all human time, voices, songs, music, drum beats, and heartbeats rose, with the sparks, cinders, and smoke, into the sky, toward the sun by day, toward the distant, listening stars by night, of lilting kinds, offering, celebrating, and other anciently sacred, wordful and wordless kinds, where some of our own ancestors once surely stood or sat, meditated, chanted, or danced with wild abandon, naked or painted, or hatted and coated, till the last of the embers died out, gave way to the great silence and stillness of the earth around them, of the vast and mysterious world folded and unfolding around them, where we can gather, go further in, invite and embrace our own kindling, crackling, blazing from the center of our beings. Let forth our own fire to reach and touch, light, and warm every circle of our lives, our living, all our making, all our loving. Around the fire. Gary Snyder, the poet and proponent of the wild natural world, said nature is not a place to visit, it is home. And he has this poem. Getting in the wood. The sour smell, blue stain, water squirts out round the wedge, lifting quarters of rounds covered with ants. A living glove of ants upon my hand. The pole of the sledge a bit peened over, so the wedge springs off and tumbles, ringing like high-pitched bells into the complex duff of twigs, poison oak, bark, sawdust, shards of logs. And the sweat drips down. Smell of crushed ants, the lean and heave on the peavy that breaks free, the last of a bucked 3-foot round. It lies flat on smashed oaklings. Wedge and sledge, peavy and maul, little axe, canteen, piggyback can of saw mix gas and oil for the chain, knapsack of files and goggles and rags. All to gather the dead and the down. The young men throw splits on the piles, bodies hardening, learning the pace and the smell of tools from this delve in the winter, death topple of elderly oak. 4 chords. Thank you, Gary Snyder. And maybe we reflect on what we beautifully simply gather in our innocence and our youth, not least. This is Judith Harris, another new poet for me, gathering leaves in grade school. They were smooth ovals, and some the shade of potatoes. Some had been moth-eaten or spotted. The maples were starched and crackled like campfire. We put them under tracing paper and rubbed our crayons over them, X-raying the spread of their bones and black-veined catacombs. We colored them green and brown and orange, and cut them out along the edges, labeling them deciduous or evergreen. All day, in the stuffy air of the classroom, with its cockeyed globe and nautical maps of ocean floors, I watched those leaves, lost in their own worlds, flap on the pins of the bulletin boards, without branches or roots, or even a sky to hold on to. Thank you, Judith Harris. Well, we have human gatherings, of course, but what about gatherings of all kinds of animals? Well, here are some especially intriguing ones, curious and colorful ones that I came across. I'll give us just a couple. The Synchronous Fireflies in Tennessee. In summer, the best-known group of them is found at Elkmont, Tennessee, in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So many tourists were coming to see them that officials now closed the entrance road to Elkmont during the Firefly season. One gets there by taking a special shuttle. So it's some immense gathering of them. The Narcisse snake dens in Manitoba. Every September, thousands of garter snakes slither into limestone crevices in the Interlake region of Manitoba. In some places, one can see more snakes together than anywhere else in the world. The best known crevices are the Narcisse snake dens. They're near Narcisse, a hamlet north of Winnipeg. This is, by the way, from List Verse. I got this. And they go on about that. But then the other one is the Bald Eagle Festival in Fraser Valley. Of course, they're the national emblem of the United States, magnificent. They tend to come in small numbers, so seeing one is usually a treat. Now imagine seeing thousands of them along a short stretch of river, which happens when they congregate in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, the largest gathering of bald eagles in the world. Here's what happens. Every November, large numbers of salmon swim from the Pacific Ocean into the rivers of British Columbia to spawn, and the bald eagles love the salmon, so they've learned to come to that spot. Love to see that. How about you? And maybe you've heard somewhere about the peculiar names for groups of animals, like a gaggle of geese, a murder of crows, a charm of finches, a smack of jellyfish, an exultation of larks, a parliament of owls, a prickle of porcupines, a zeal of zebras. David Allen Evans, another new poet for me and us, some of us. 60 years later, I notice, inside a flock of blackbirds, the Venetian blinds I dusted off for my mother on Saturday mornings, closing, opening them with the pull cord a few times just to watch the outside universe keep blinking as the flock suddenly rises from November stubble, hovers a few seconds, closing, opening, blinking, before it tilts, then vanishes over a hill. Thank you, David Allen Evans. Linda Pasta and the birds are heading south, pulled by a compass in the genes. They are not fooled by this odd November summer. Though we stand in our doorways wearing cotton dresses, we are watching them as they swoop and gather. The shadow of wings falls over the heart. When they rustle among the empty branches, the trees must think their lost leaves have come back. The birds are heading south. Instinct is the oldest story. They fly over their doubles, the mute weather vanes, teaching all of us, with their tail feathers, the true north. Thank you, Linda Paston. This is one of mine, the crabapple tree. From Central Park, New York, one March, years back. Still winter bare, but buried. The crabapple tree in the park is leaved, gray and rust, with a flock of robins enjoying the last fruits of their frozen world as it melts away into spring. I'm coming back as we sort of began in a way with the feasts and fetes and fiestas and how marvelous they can be. And what about yours? Your bright memories of ones past and ones to come. This is the Uruguayan writer Eduardo Galeano, the fiesta. The sun was gentle, the air clear, and the sky cloudless. Buried in the sand, the clay pots steamed. As they went from ocean to mouth, the shrimp passed through the hands of Fernando, master of ceremonies, who bathed them in a holy water of salt, onions, and garlic. There was good wine. Seated in a circle, we friends shared the wine and shrimp in the ocean that spread out free and luminous at our feet. As it took place, that happiness was already being remembered by our memory. It would never end, nor would we, for we are all mortal until the first kiss and the second glass, which is something everyone knows, no matter how small his or her knowledge. Thank you, Eduardo Galeano. And on the occasion of a hiking picnic back in one July on Balanced Rock, Sentinel Range, Pitch-Off Mountain in the Adirondacks, Lake Placid, New York, was this, Balance Rocks. We balance bodies and boulders high above the earth, high above the valley, on a cloud-sized plinth of granite. For a post-climb pause, a brown bag picnic, déjeuner sur sommet, with sandwiches and fresh slices of sun and wind. For a tender rest in the warm chests, waists, shoulders, hands of our partners, one solo, a baker's dozen of Putnam campers, kindred travelers. I We spoke about the impending celebration of Thanksgiving in these parts, and I felt some related poems worth sharing here and there. Like this one, Thanksgiving for Two by Marjorie Sacer, Saiser. Yet again, another poet I didn't know about. The adults we call our children will not be arriving with their children in tow for Thanksgiving. We must make our feast ourselves. Slice our half ham, indulge, fill our plates, potatoes and green beans carried to our table near the window. We are the feast, plenty of years, arguments. I'm thinking the whole bundle of it rolls out like a white tablecloth. We wanted to be good company for one another. Little did we know that first picnic how this would go. Your hair was thick, mine long and easy. We climbed a bluff to look over a storybook, plain. We chose our spot as high as we could to see the river and the checkerboard fields. What we didn't see was this day, in our pajamas if we want to, wrinkled hands strong, wine and juice glasses, toasting whatever's next, the decades of side by side, our great good luck. Thank you, Marjorie Sacer. Thank you. I was contemplating iconically joyous occasions. We also gather around and for, and thought of weddings, how universal. This was a poem by Joseph Legaspi at the bridal shop. The gowns and dresses hang like fleece in their glaring whiteness, sheepskin softness, the ruffled matrimonial love in which the brides in waiting dance around expectantly, hummingbirds to tulips. I was dragged here, David's bridal, off the concrete gray arterial highways of a naval town. I sink into the flush bachelor's couch, along with other men sprinkled throughout the shop, as my friend and her female compatriots parade taffeta dresses in monstrous shades of pastels, persimmons, lilacs, periwinkles, the colors of weddings and religious holidays. Trains drag on the floor, sleeves drape like limp pressed sheets of candied fruits, ribbons fluttering like pale leaves. I watch families gathered together, the women like worshippers, circling around the smiling brides-to-be, as if they were the anointed ones. The men, in turn, submerge deeper into couches, into sleep, while the haloed, veiled women cannot contain their joy. They flash their winning smiles, and they are beautiful. Thank you, Joseph Legaspi, for that poem. Here's Jane Hirschfield, A Blessing for Wedding. Today when persimmons ripen, today when fox kits come out of their den into snow, today when the spotted egg releases its wren song, today when the maple sets down its red leaves, today when windows keep their promise to open, today when fire keeps its promise to warm, today when someone you love has died or someone you never met has died, today when someone you love has been born or someone you will not meet has been born, today when rain leaps to the waiting of roots in their dryness, today when starlight bends to the roofs of the hungry and tired, today when someone sits long inside his last sorrow, today when someone steps into the heat of her first embrace, today let this light bless you, with these friends let it bless you, with snow scent and lavender bless you. Let the vow of this day keep itself wildly and wholly spoken and silent, surprise you inside your ears, sleeping and waking, unfold itself inside your eyes. Let its fierceness and tenderness hold you. Let its vastness be undisguised in all your days. Thank you, Jane Hirschfield. So lovely. And we, of course, have the gatherings of sadness when people we loved or admired leave the earth, leave our touchable lives, as many have done even in the last years, I know, unexpectedly. This is Peter Everwine's poem, After the Funeral. It's from his collection, Listening Long and Late. We opened closets and bureau drawers and packed away in boxes, dresses, and shoes the silk underthings still wrapped in tissue. We sorted through cedar chests. We gathered and set aside the keepsakes and the good silver and brought up from the coal cellar jars of tomato sauce, peppers, jellied fruit. We dismantled, we took down from the walls. We bundled and carted off and swept clean. Goodbye, goodbye, we said, closing the door behind us, going our separate ways from the house we had emptied, and which, in the coming days, we would fill again and empty and try to fill again. Thank you, Peter Everwine. That led me to think of W.H. Auden's famous poem that you may well know on the death of a beloved of his. Maybe you can feel into this place of ingatheredness and outpouringness, ingathered and outpoured grief. Stop all the clocks, cut off the telephone is the title. Stop all the clocks, cut off the telephone, prevent the dog from barking with a juicy bone, silence the pianos, and with muffled drum bring out the coffin. Let the mourners come. Let aeroplanes circle, moaning overhead, scribbling on the sky the message, he is dead. Put crepe boughs round the white necks of the public doves. Let the traffic policemen wear black cotton gloves. He was my north, my south, my east and west, my working week and my Sunday rest, my noon, my midnight, my talk, my song. I thought that love would last forever. I was wrong. The stars are not wanted now. Put out everyone. Pack up the moon and dismantle the sun. Pour away the ocean and sweep up the wood, for nothing now can ever come to any good. Thank you, Auden, for that. I went afield of gatherings of those kinds to when we were working as a group. That's what came to mind as a dimension of things, gathering to create something or make something happen that we can't do solo. And this is a poem from the 2017 America's Cup yacht races in Bermuda, where I was a cultural contributor. And this was in honoring spirit of one of the teams. I actually honored all of them, but this was France's Groupama, their team, and about the harmonious way they came together to achieve something greater, something marvelous. It's called Together. Single hands to all hands, minds, hearts meeting, making history. How a team, land to sea, ship or shore, becomes one stream, one confluence of intention and action, one poetry in motion, one living, flowing expression. Together. Juan Felipe Herrera has this poem, an invocation that I found beautiful and a welcome call in a time of such challenge for so many. And in some people and places, a withering of heart, of spirit, of hope. It's called Let Us Gather in a Flourishing Way, and it's an interesting mix of English and Spanish. I'll give it my best. Let us gather in a flourishing way with su luz, grains, abriendo los cantos que cargamos cada día en el young pasto nuestro cuerpo para regalar y dar feliz perlas pearls of corn flowing, herbolas de vida on las cuatro esquinas. Let us gather in a flourishing way, contentos, llenos de fuerza tu vida, giving nacimientos to fragrant ríos, dulces, frescos, verdes, turquoise strong, carne de nuestros hijos, rainbows. Let us gather in a flourishing way, on la luz and la carne of our heart to toil, tranquilos in fields of blossoms, juntos to stretch los brazos, tranquilos with the rain, and la mañana, temprana estrella on our forehead, cielo de calor, and wisdom to meet us where we toil, siempre, in the garden of our struggle and joy. Let us offer our hearts a saludar, our aguila, rising freedom, a celebrar, woven brazos, branches, ramas, piedras, nopales, plumas, piercing, bursting figs and aguacates, ripe mariposa fields and mares claros of our face to breathe, todos on el camino, blessing seeds to give, to grow, maitzlen, en las manos de nuestro amor. Gracias, Juan Felipe Herrera. Let us gather in a flourishing way. And let us, listeners, let us do that. Let's find our flourishing in gathered ways. Galway Canal, I was thinking also about the feasting of two bodies, two close-knit energies, in this case, two lovers. The feast. Juniper and cedar in the sand, the lake beyond. Here, deer meat smoking on a driftwood fire, and we two reaching each other by the wash of blue on the warm sand together, lying as careless as water on the land. The feast is sweet. Birds wheel round, the remnants of the food. Let us be dumb this afternoon. Not a gull's loud speech wakes these bodies from the drowsing beach, but wake when waves hush, and we have become as two cliffs that are labored to sand. The water stills. In the west the gold bars melt. We catch our breath to see the sunset renew the day on the reflecting lake. And we who gave the sand a form now take its substance, and between the day and night, awaken in the last light like evening stars. As the light is denied, a creature speaks. I think it is the stones that wear each other, to cold sand who put a voice in our silence, or else under the cliff a surf begins. It tells of another evening, and another, beside lapping waters and the small lapped rocks. The sand grows colder, the ancient body warms. If love had not smiled, we would never grieve. But on every landscape this turning crown flashes and fades. We will feast on love again in the flaming light, and rise again and leave our two shapes dying in each other's arms. Thank you, Galway Canal. Which made me think of Derek Walcott's poem. And let us ponder other kinds of feasting and gathering, as in your ingathering, your regathering of your own heart and selfhood, your self-love. This is love after love. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself, arriving at your own door in your own mirror. And each will smile at the other's welcome, saying, "Sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life." Thank you, Derek Walcott. Okay, let me go on. There's recollecting. I'm thinking recollecting of our innocence and our individuality. Always worth calling ourselves back to, yes? This is Jacqueline Woodson's poem On Paper. The first time I write my full name, Jacqueline Amanda Woodson. Without anybody's help, on a clean white page in my composition notebook, I know, if I wanted to, I could write anything. Letters becoming words, words gathering meaning, becoming thoughts outside my head, becoming sentences written by Jacqueline Amanda Woodson. Thank you to her. That's from her collection, Brown Girl Dreaming. How about this one? Because I was thinking of places of gathering, like museums and theaters, opera houses. How about this one, though? Theater of Shadows by Derek Atsuji. Nights we could not sleep. Summer insects singing in dry heat, short-circuiting the nerves. Grandma would light a lamp. At the center of our narrow room, whose clean conspiracy of light whispered to the tall blank walls, illuminating them suddenly like the canvas of a dream. Between the lamp and wall, Her arthritic wrists grew pliant as she molded and cast improbable animal shapes moving on the wordless screen. A blackbird, like a myna, not a crow. A dark horse's head that could but would not talk. An ashen rabbit, her elusive self, triggered in snow, that a quivering touch, like death's, sent scampering into the wings of that little theater of shadows that eased us into dreams. Lovely, thank you, Derek Atsuji. Jim Harrison has this poem, The River. Yes, we'll gather by the river, the beautiful river. They say it runs by the throne of God. This is where God invented fish, wherever, but then God's throne is as wide as the universe. If you're attentive, you'll see the throne's borders in the stars. We're on this side, and when you get to the other side, we don't know what will happen, if anything. If nothing happens, we won't know it. I said once, is that cynical? No, nothing is nothing. Not upsetting, just nothing. Then again, maybe we'll be cast at the speed of light through the universe to God's throne. His hair is bounteous. All the 5,000 birds on earth were created there. The firstborn cranes, herons, hawks, at the back, so as not to frighten the little ones. Even now they remember this divine habitat. Shall we gather at the river, this beautiful river? We'll sing with the warblers perched on his eyelashes. Thank you, Jim Harrison. I was not familiar with that poem at all. For some reason, I was thinking also of the weather, and I was thinking metaphorically. There was a book that Winston Churchill wrote back in time called The Gathering Storm. It was also made into a film with Albert Finney, one of my favorites, both actors, and I thought the film was quite good. And in the 1930s, Churchill, as you may know, was out of government, and he was sitting as a backbench member of Parliament, and he was a lonely voice warning about German rearmament and the coming of a second major war on the continent. And he presses his concerns about Hitler, but he's cast as a warmonger and frequently shouted down in Parliament by members on both sides of the aisle. But he gets information from a civil servant in the Foreign Office about the non-accurate reporting, and he gives the accurate figures to and the tide begins to turn. And so the gathering storm, of course, is the gathering of war, coming the storm. And it was also done, so I'm encouraging you, if you're interested, to see that film. But then it was done also wonderfully as The Darkest Hour. And Churchill was played in 2017 by Gary Oldman. Superb film. And beyond all that, I wondered, what might they later write or make into a riveting film about the world storm, the maelstrom we've all been in, that few saw coming back in 2019. I wonder. And I thought of Churchill, and I thought of heroes of the day and since, and I thought of the resiliency of people, not just individuals, but people rising to the occasion and being resilient. And I was thinking of a couple of quotes we might appreciate on resilience. John Kabat-Zinn said, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." Napoleon Hill said, "The strongest oak of the forest is not the one that is protected from the storm and hidden from the sun. It's the one that stands in the open, where it is compelled to struggle for its existence against the winds and rains and the scorching sun." And Nelson Mandela, "The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." Here's something from Resiliency in Action on Healing the Resilient Soul. A growing body of social science research suggests that each person does have a, quote, innate self-righting tendency, capacity for resilience, and how this capacity is connected to one's true spiritual nature as perceived across several spiritual traditions and thinkers. Experiential activities that nurture resilience by meeting the needs of the soul is integral, and it includes creativity, music, storytelling, laughter, deep human sharing, and building cohesive community. Might this be a time to gather into our deeper humanity, I ask myself, and for the best of humanity to gather, to come together. And this is a call of a kind that I wrote not that long back, called Our Humanity. I need a little water for this. Our humanity. What we belong to. What we can point to out there around us. And what a singular gift. Our innate sentience. Deeper humanness. Shared with 8 billion other souls and bodies. What we can rise to. In here. If and when we choose to. Or are moved to. Summon the truer and fuller humanity that, whether clearly or obscurely, resides so surely within each of us, whether it's eager or reticent, lost or longed for, sleeping or awakening. I remember ceremonies that began in the dark of a church or a country field, a first candle being lit from a source, and from that first lighting to the other held by the person beside, then each holder in turn letting their flame light the next, and next, until all were aglow, until we soon cascadingly formed one immense body of light, a bonfire of human-kindled kind, reflecting spirits, reflected in eyes, beaconing a remembering out, sending a hope-filled illumination out into the unseen and unknown. The same way the flame of our humanity and mine, of your humanity and mine, instead of flickering alone, can be lit, fed, combined, and enlarged, can join the wicks, the rising spirits of all those who, from where we stand, we cannot see or know but can feel in the center of our chests. Enough to create a great forest, a great sea, family of uniting, igniting humanity, a shared light rise, the greatest that people of any time in history or memory have ever known. A conscious joining, generous emanating of human light, benevolent light, that brings wanted, beyond needed solace, strength, and wordless togetherness forth, to soothe the heart and smooth the future of the trembling world. Our humanity. It was written here in Rhode Island, January 2021. Bending now to our last stretch of sharings for the time being, Joy Harjo, when the world as we knew it ended. We were dreaming on an occupied island at the farthest edge of a trembling nation when it went down. 2 towers rose up from the east island of commerce and touched the sky. Men walked on the moon. Oil was sucked dry by 2 brothers. Then it went down, swallowed by a fire dragon, by oil and fear, eaten whole. It was coming. We had been watching since the eve of the missionaries in their long and solemn clothes to see what would happen. We saw it from the kitchen window over the sink as we made gave, cooked rice and potatoes, enough for an army. We saw it all. As we changed diapers and fed the babies, we saw it through the branches of the knowledgeable tree, through the snags of stars, through the sun and storms from our knees, and as we bathed and washed the floors. The conference of the birds warned us, as they flew over destroyers in the harbor parked there since the first takeover. It was by their song and talk that we knew when to rise, when to look out the window to the commotion going on, the magnetic field thrown off by grief. We heard it, the racket in every corner of the world, as the hunger for war rose up in those who would steal to be president or to be king or emperor, to own the trees, stones, and everything else that moved about the earth, inside the earth, and above it. We knew it was coming, tasted the winds who gathered intelligence from each leaf and flower, from every mountain, sea and desert, from every prayer and song all over this tiny universe floating in the skies of infinite being. And then it was over. This world we had grown to love, for its sweet grasses, for the many-colored horses and fishes, for the shimmering possibilities while dreaming. But then there were the seeds to plant, and the babies who needed milk and comforting, and someone picked up a guitar or ukulele from the rubble and began to sing about the light, flutter the kick beneath the skin of the earth we felt there beneath us, a warm animal, a song being born between the legs of her, a poem. Thank you, Joy Harjo. Children Gathering Flowers by Nicholas Moore. Small words permit the gathering of flowers. the touch of hands upon the stalk, the colors, the pride in bursting bouquets larger than small fingers can control. The meadows shine with green children with blue and perfect blooms, with pink nursemaids' dresses flowing and winds curling about the airs, the sweet, bright airs. There is a charm in children and in flowers, no gathering of gold or love, no picking of choicest delicacies, fruits and sweets, of choicest ladies' breasts and lips and hair. No such accumulation can compare in honesty. The children have an air of summer. It is in the hand. It is the clearest honesty, the merest act, a gay persuasion of children gathering flowers. Thank you, Nicholas Moore. And Marjorie Hunt, gathering of the distance. Between April and the asters, all is spread with honey. Each bee, pulled by a golden thread, is gathering that distance. J.B. Goodenough's poem. How about that for a name? Good enough. Gathering constellations. Miner at night, minding the sluice gate, looks up. Lord, there's a mother lode. If I had a pan big enough to sift the sky for stars. Farmer, past dusk, unloading bales, dreams. Lord, there's a field. If ever I saw a field, if ever I had a way to mow it. Doryman, riding the black wave home at dark, considers, Lord, it's a shoal, from here clear to heaven, and no man has a net to bring it home. Thank you, J.B. Goodenough. Mark Van Doren, slowly, slowly wisdom gathers. Slowly, slowly wisdom gathers, golden dust in the afternoon, somewhere between the sun and me, sometimes so near that I can see, yet never settling, late or soon. Would that it did, and a rug of gold spread west of me a mile or more. Not large, but so that I might lie face up between the earth and sky and know what none has known before. Then I would tell it best I could the secrets of that shining place, the web of the world, how thick, how thin, how firm, with all things folded in, how ancient and how full of grace. Linda Hogan's poem, Inside. How something is made flesh no one can say. The buffalo soup becomes a woman who sings every day to her horses or summons another to her private body, saying, come, touch. This is how it begins, the path of a newly born who, salvaged from other lives and worlds, will grow to become a woman, a man, with a heart that never rests, and the gathered berries, the wild grapes, enter the body. Human wine, which can love, where nothing created is wasted. The swallowed grain takes you through the dreams of another night. The deer meat becomes hand strong enough to work. But I love most the white-haired creature eating green leaves. The sun shines there, swallowed, showing in her face, taking in all the light. And in the end, when the shadow from the ground enters the body and remains, in the end, you might say, this is myself, still unknown, still a mystery. And last for now, one of mine, what if you forget the turkey? However tender and moist, the golden skin supremely crisp, the stuffing and the gravy, however savory. Forget the mashed potatoes, the pumpkin pie, and all the wine. What if you simply remember why you gather around a table of kindred others to begin with? This day, or any day. Contemplate what fineness, fullness of heart you can bring to each table, each other, before you even arrive to sit there. What good stories and nourishing reveries, poetries you can spread out on, sing out to the table. How greatly it matters. Every day you're here. Every time you take time, make room to feast on your life, to toast your one and onlyness, and the lives and specialness of the others, dear and near or far, who make it all the more joyful, flavorful, worthwhile, while you're here on earth. Then on with, savoring the rest and grateful tastes of it all. Thank you again for leaning in, floating and feeling in, for gathering round in a way, as you do, to take in this latest broadcast, From time to time, I share listeners' comments, as I did last week, and answer their questions. To send me a note or a kudo, it'd be good to hear from you. Just email colin@thepoetorialist.com. If you'd like to express your thanks with a donation, that'd be wonderful and so helpful. You can do so by PayPal or Venmo or directly through my site, thepoetorialist.com, or simply by mail to me at P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island, 02891. If you want to explore hosting me for a given time on a given property as a working poet in residence, to bring forth a new body of poetic art and dedicate it to you, please reach out. I also seek fellow artists to collaborate with on projects musical to theatrical, like working with composers on scoring selected poems and poetically narrating given productions. Meanwhile, you can hear all my broadcasts online on your own easy time, on YouTube as replays, and soon ahead all past and new shows on Spotify, Google, Anchor.fm, and elsewhere. I hope you'll lean in again next week, or soon again. Until then, dear listeners, here's to making the best and most of every good gathering opportunity. To gather your inner self more fully and healthfully together, to gather wholeheartedly with people you care about, and they you. Gather around you whatever greatly matters, and gather the strength and courage to meet each day, each challenge, each of life's invitations with openness, readiness, and resilience. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.